Welcome to another episode of Full Build Friday, where I try to build a character from a comic, game, or similar source using the baseline rules of Pathfinder 2nd Edition and the Path Builder app. Welcome, boys and ghouls, to the first Full Build Friday of Spooktober. This month, I'll be bringing you builds of characters inspired by classic horror movie monsters. And to kick it all off, we're also going to have a rebuild for Sett the Boss from League of Legends.
Turn into a jet, bomb the Russians, crash into the sun.
You may be wondering how exactly Sett fits into this, and to cover that, it may be best to look at his build goals. Cedric, his full name, is the child of a human father and a Vestayan mother, with Wolverine features, leading to bullies in his youth to call him the half-beast bastard. When his pit fighter of a father disappeared, Sett followed in his footsteps, but rather than finding his father, found himself becoming the boss of Ionia's fighting pits. An important note before we get into his actual abilities is that Sett isn't a trained fighter, or a martial artist. In his own words,
Technique is for lightweights.
So that's something I want to keep in mind for this build. We'll also want to capture the feel of Sett's Juggernaut class, a durable dude that deals out damage but lacks mobility. His passive, Pit Grit, comes in two parts. Its Heart of the Half-Beast grants him extra health regen, while Heavy Hands causes his attacks to alternate between a left and right punch, with the latter coming out faster and more furious. This adds some interesting differentiation to Sett's strikes that will be a little hard to capture. Following up and taking advantage of this 1-2 punch is Knuckle Down. This grants him a slight speed buff to chase down enemies while also empowering his next two attacks with bonus damage. His second ability is Haymaker, that has a passive and an activated aspect. The former causes him to store damage that he takes as Grit. When he activates Haymaker, he converts that grit into a shield, while also throwing a punch so powerful it damages an entire cone in front of him, and deals true damage in its center. There's a lot of pieces to this one, but I've got plans for most of them. In addition to these powerful punches, Sett can really mix up the melee with Facebreaker, which causes him to grab enemies on either side of him and pull them in. If he gets at least one enemy on either side, he smashes them together and briefly stuns them. His ultimate, the Showstopper, further builds on his ability to forcibly move and reposition enemies. Sett seizes a target and leaps with them, smashing them into the ground upon landing to damage the target and other enemies in the area. Now where all of that covers his presence in Baseline League, he also shows up in Legends of Runeterra, with the Challenger ability to choose his blocker, and effects that prevent him from going down as long as he's on the attack. To put a nice little bow on it, we're aiming to build a bare-knuckled brawler, a savage and powerful pugilist that lacks any formal training. Instead, he relies on rapid-fire fisticuffs, haymakers powerful enough to launch a cone of force, and some good old flinging enemies around. What Sett lacks in skill, he supplants with sheer strength and sorcerer's talent inherited from his beloved Vestayan mother, from whom his Wolverine traits are also derived. You may be wondering, since I did start this video off with a claim that we're building some Halloween horrors, where exactly Sett fits into that. And I have to admit, the connection is tenuous, probably the most so out of any of these builds. But the half-beast bastard is going to serve as our werewolverine with his untamed fighting style and even a little dip into the archetype. As another note, I want to try getting a bit deeper into the details going forward, so let me know what you think of the changes here in this video, and let's get into it. To kick it off, I am going to stick with my pre-master ideas, which featured Sett as a human with the half-orc heritage. While a little lacking in the more mystical matters of his mama, this heritage really helps to sell that half-beast bastard aspect, which can be seen in some of its feats. On top of that, the orc feats offer a lot of fist fighting focus, which we can get right off the bat with Iron Fist.
Iron Fist. Kung Fu master with fist of, well, iron.
No, not that one. This feat causes Sett's battle-hardened fist to lose the non-lethal trait, and instead gain the shove trait. Now knockback isn't something we really find in Sett's kit, but it is a way to bully baddies about the battlefield, something that is prevalent there. For our starting ability scores, we're going to take a boost to strength and dexterity. Sett is extraordinarily strong, and he's pretty fast on top of that. For his background, I was considering something with a criminal leaning, as Sett is a big boss in Ionia's underworld. But I realized I had the perfect option to represent Sett's meteoric rise through the fighting pits with the Gladiator.
Are you not entertained?
The fighting pits aren't just about winning. You have to make sure that there's spectacle for the crowd to come back to. And some training and performance, as well as the impressive performance skill feat, are going to help Sett with exactly that. Furthermore, this makes Sett trained in gladiatorial lore, handy when it comes time to earn an income or track down his disappeared daddy dearest. With our first boost having to go towards strength or charisma, we'll take the former to start with and then take another boost to dexterity. In my initial iteration of this build, back when I was just starting out, I used fighter, because I bought into a bit of the hype of them being better at punching than monks, due to the eventually legendary proficiency, and I thought it felt more in line with the untrained brawler concept of Sett. I have pivoted since then, and am fully in the camp that monk is the best class to represent our mighty melee mama's boy, which we'll be using for this rebuild. One thing that this immediately grants us is Flurry of Blows. While it doesn't really show off the difference in damage of his left and right punch, it is nice for demonstrating the swiftness that his second punch comes out at. And building into this, we have the chi spells to gain Inner Upheaval. The increase this provides to damage is a fantastic little show of Knuckle Down. This focus spell even affects 2 attacks when used with a Flurry of Blows, just like this ability. We are specifically avoiding any stance feats because, as I've mentioned once or twice already, Sett doesn't actually have any training when it comes to combat. It's all instincts and lessons he's learned at the School of Hard Knocks. When it comes to skills, we'll become trained in acrobatics, athletics, intimidation, and society. Sett will be taking his class boost to strength, and then spends his 4 remaining boosts on strength, dexterity, constitution, and wisdom. He needs the dexterity that he can get since he's a strength-focused monk, without any stance to give him an edge to his armor class. This means that his AC will be lagging behind dex monks, but his advanced proficiency should keep him on par with other martials. For our bombastic brawler, Sett takes up a wrestler dedication at 2nd level, and this gives him a few benefits. First off, it makes him an expert in athletics, and accompanying that is the Titan Wrestler skill feat, since Sett gets the most benefit out of using the Showstopper on big, beefy targets, like Cho'Gaths and Zax. Finally, the last effect he benefits from is a bonus to his Fortitude DC against being grappled or swallowed himself. All in all, it's a tidy little package of an archetype that gives him a considerable array of benefits. In addition to the skill feat he gained from it, he'll also take Quick Jump as his actual skill feat for this level, which compresses the actions needed for each jump and will be important for representing his Showstopper once we get the other parts of it in place. Coming in at 3rd level, Sett gains Mystic Strikes and Incredible Movement from his class. The first of these causes his attacks to become magical, even without his hand wraps of mighty blows, while the latter starts off by increasing his speed by 10 feet, and will continue to do so as he levels up. While this is a constant effect, it's going to serve as a nod towards the speed up he gets when he activates Knuckle Down. By then taking Ancestral Paragon as his general feat, we can look into the Overlooked Mastermind Ancestry feat. This is one of those feats that I was talking about that will let Sett take advantage of his heritage. In particular, this lets him seem like a less likely culprit by making him trained in deception, which might actually be most important for when he's lying to his mama and ensuring her that he certainly hasn't been sneaking down to the fighting pits, no siree. Then, since he already has his athletics at expert, we'll spend a skill increase on gladiatorial lore, becoming an expert in that as well. For Sett's 4th level, we'll take Crushing Grab, which lets him deal strength as bludgeoning damage whenever he successfully grapples a creature. Unfortunately, this doesn't mean much for him right now. You could maybe treat it akin to his Facebreaker, preventing a creature from making an escape while also dealing some damage. More importantly, it will set him up for a feat down the line. Until then, we've got Powerful Leap as his skill feat, letting him bound higher and farther. Again, this will probably be important for the Showstopper. 5th level starts a little basic, with Sett becoming an expert in his strikes and perception thanks to his class, before he also becomes an expert in intimidation with his skill increase, as he is a rather daunting figure, whose taunts tend to take the form of threats.
It's easy to talk big when you still got all your teeth.
This being 5th level, it also means that Sett gets his ability boost, and this is actually just a repeat from 1st level, with boosts going to Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, and Wisdom once again. Similarly, he takes another ancestry feat that enhances his unarmed combat capability with Bloody Blows. Again, not quite representative of anything specific to Sett, but it adds some persistent bleed damage to his unarmed crits, in addition to the stunning critical specialization gained from this level's Expert Strikes. This fearsome fist fighter fits advanced Chi spells into his build at 6th level, with the intent of taking Chi Blast. This causes Sett to deal damage in a 15-foot or larger cone, depending on how many actions he spends on it. This is an easy fit for his Haymaker ability, allowing him to blast a cone with damage, though this being force damage, it's almost like the entire zone is true damage rather than just its center. As for his skill feat for this level, Sett takes Experienced Professional. When he's in the ring, using gladiatorial lore to earn an income, he eliminates the risk of getting a critical failure, and also increases how much he earns on a failure. Not that the boss would ever fail. As our boisterous Bossa Nova swaggers his way into 7th level, the first thing we're looking at is his path to perfection. Given the burliness of our beefy brawler, he becomes a master of fortitude saves, getting a critical success whenever he rolls a success on them. He also starts hitting a bit harder as he gains weapon specialization, giving him a +2 bonus on top of his strength for now. He'll use his skill increase to become a master in athletics before taking fast recovery as its general feat, which is a nod towards the enhanced healing that he receives from his Heart of the Half-Beast. Though, it's not the only one we'll be exploring. Crashing onto the scene at 8th level is Whirling Throw. Like Crushing Grab before it, this is taken from Sett's archetype, and given that it allows Sett to launch a target into a group of enemies, it's a pretty good way to show off his showstopper. Now, regrettably, it doesn't come with Sett leaping along with his unfortunate victim, but this is a single action, which means that Sett could very easily quick jump right after them to better simulate the proper effect. In fact, if he starts his turn with his victim already grappled, he can use this level's intimidating prowess to make the enemies more vulnerable, putting the flex on them before trying to fling them with his Whirling Throw, getting those saves nice and low before he tries to launch them. Packed into 9th level is a pretty parcel for our Papa pursuing pretty boy. He starts off with Monk Expertise, making him an expert in his class DC and spell DCs, which is important for his Chi Blast. Furthermore, Metal Strikes means that he starts treating his unarmed attacks as Cold Iron and Silver. He'll become a master in gladiatorial lore with his skill increase before he takes up Natural Ambition. This ancestry feat lets him reach back to his 1st level class feats to pick up Chi spells again, but this time he's using it to take Chi Rush, to more precisely resemble the speed boost of his Knuckle Down, to let him charge in the fray to lay the smackdown on his enemies. For our 10th level class feat, I'm of two minds. You could take Aerial Pile Driver, which is another great way of doing the showstopper, but while this deals extra damage and puts enemies in the dirt on a success, it lacks the launching aspect that Whirling Throw manages to represent. So, if you are content with Whirling Throw representing a showstopper, you could instead take something like Flurry of Maneuvers or Mix Maneuvers to grab two enemies on either side of Sett at once, which is a great way of demonstrating his Facebreaker, since he already has Crushing Grab, getting some damage and lockdown in there all at once. His skill feat is a bit simpler, with Say That Again. This is 100% something that I could see Sett doing, should anybody have the gall to insult his beloved mother.
What'd you say about my mama?
This lets him shove them back as a reaction, which takes advantage of the shove trait granted by his Iron Fist. Getting into the 11th level for Sett, he gets a second path to perfection, which lets him also become a master in Reflex. His general feat here will be spent on Die Hard, as the more damage he takes just ends up getting him more grit, and a bigger shield, making him harder to kill. On top of that, as long as he's attacking in Legends of Runeterra, an evolved Sett can't be killed. His skill increase here is spent on Intimidation to make him a master in it. I'm going to have to admit, the 12th level feat here is a little odd, and maybe you want to skip it. But I like the look of Overwhelming Breath. This spell shaping feat causes the next strikes he makes as part of a monk spell to ignore physical resistance. This means that it only works with his inner upheaval, but it allows him to punch through resistances and deal some true damage, just like the center of his haymaker. If this seems too minor to bother taking, feel free to take one of the other options that I've already mentioned, or something else that suits your fancy. Once again though, our skill feat is nice and easy. Battlecry lets him take advantage of his investment in Intimidation and make an enemy frightened as a free action before the fight even begins. You know, it lets him showboat a bit before the match starts. Let the enemies see just who they're squaring off against and get them quaking. Sett really starts to master his combat capabilities at 13th level, with both Graceful Mastery making him a master in unarmored defense, and Master Strikes making him a master with his unarmed attacks and simple weapons. However, he only becomes an expert in deception with his skill increase, just so that he can make sure his mom doesn't catch on to his current antics. And given his survivability and the way that Sett flirts with death, we'll use Bounce Back as his ancestry feat, letting him get back up into the fight that much quicker. It really just lets him throw himself into the thick of it, and do some devastating damage while dishing out denting dupes. As promised, this build finally takes the Were Creature dedication at 14th level. While this gives him a weakness to silver damage, it does also grant him toughness as a free feat, making him more of the juggernaut that he is meant to be. Now, unfortunately, there isn't a Were-Wolverine for our brolic beefcake of a bruiser, but Were-Bear probably fits these small, fast, and ferocious critters the best. By using the chain shape action provided by this feat, Sett gets some new unarmed attacks, but I'm not sure he's ever gone feral enough to really make use of them, to really put value to them. We'll follow this class feat though with 2 Angry to Die as his skill feat. The boss doesn't go down without a fight, and if he does go down, he's definitely getting back up with a fight as well, roaring and ready to go with a fresh Demoralize made as a reaction, so he still has plenty of actions left to punish his victims with. For 15th level, Sett unlocks Greater Weapon Specialization to gain a +6 on all of his master attacks. He'll use his third and final path to perfection to become a legend in Fortitude. But on the topic of saving throws, he also takes Canny Acumen as his general feat for will saves. This doesn't do anything for him right now, but in 2 levels it will make him a master in will saves, and makes him just that much more of a juggernaut, a bit more unstoppable on all levels. This level also comes with some ability boost, which will be spent on Strength, Dexterity, Wisdom, purely for the sake of his spell saving throws, and then Charisma, so that he can boost 4 ability scores at 20th level. Finally, he becomes a legend in Athletics with his skill increase, meaning he can grapple, trip, or whatever he wants to do to any creature, regardless of its size. Now, aside from playing into the whole werewolf theme I wanted to build for, one of the reasons I actually went for the Were Creature dedication is the presence of the Cornered Animal class feat at 16th level. This specifically lets Sett strike 2 enemies on opposite sides of him, just like Facebreaker, both at the same multiple attack penalty. With his strikes already being agile, he'll avoid that -2 as well, which means he's more likely to crit and land that stun to more fully represent this move. When it comes to the showstopper, Sett can cover some considerable distance, and for the sake of that aspect, he uses Cloud Jump as this level's skill feat. This feat gets hilarious on monks, because triple the distance he can long jump at this point is a maximum of 150 feet. Could you imagine watching somebody jump 150 feet? The idea of it is just pure bonkers. For Sett's 17th level, he finally becomes a graceful legend, meaning that he'll be a legend in unarmored defense, and with that previous increase to dexterity, he's got that pretty well maxed out. In addition to making him a legend in his unarmored defense, he also becomes a master with his monk class DC and his chi spells. He also gets adamantine strikes, meaning that his punches get treated as adamantine, so there won't be much resisting his blows. Now, with everything we've done, you may notice that we're still lacking the shield of his Haymaker. The monk has access to healing, which isn't exactly right, so we are left to rely on heroic presence, giving him the temporary hit points to resemble the shield that he converts his grit into. It's far from perfect, but it does give him that shield and makes him a little tougher. He rounds out this level then with a skill increase to gladiatorial lore to become a legend in the ring. Another cool aspect of the Were Creature dedication comes online at 18th level, with Force of Nature granting him fast healing, to really and truly represent the heart of a half-beast that he inherited from his mother. Meanwhile, he inherits his father's legacy as a pit fighter with legendary professional to truly cement him as a boss of the brawl. 19th level's perfected form guarantees Sett at least a 10 on his very first attack of his turn, and he gets robust health as his general feat so that he can heal more when his allies treat his wounds, like his coach keeping him hyped up and patched up between his rabid rounds in the ring. One final class granted skill increase makes him a legend, and of course, Intimidation. For Sett's final ability boosts at 20th level will increase Strength, Constitution, Intelligence, and Charisma. That int boost will make him trained in nature, referencing his half-Astaean heritage, before we turn attention to his final feats. I'm going to start with the skill feat, because if you know me, you've already guessed it. With that legendary Intimidation, he will obviously take Scare to Death, which I want to mention feels particularly appropriate for the Halloween theme. Huh? Right? Okay, if you aren't buying that, he is going to pick up the new capstone feat for the monk, Godbreaker. Given the investment that we've made into Sett's abilities as a grappler, it seems like a waste not to take this, and it is also just super cool. You throw an enemy into the air and then jump after them to deliver up to 3 strikes that launch them even higher. Hard as it is, if Sett can then land all 3 of those strikes, which again is no easy feat, he then drives his victim back into the ground for some massive damage. It's almost like a different way to show off the showstopper because landing all 3 strikes means that Sett gets to keep the hold as he slams them back into the dirt. And while that is certainly a suitable simulation of the showstopper, I'm not stopping just yet, because we have the free archetype variant rule to talk about. Honestly, this would be massive for Sett, letting him grab his wrestler feats and still take stuff like mixed maneuvers and other monk feats. It even lets him take Godbreaker as his 20th level archetype feat, and then something like Enduring Quickness for his actual capstone class feat. Furthermore, it lets him start taking up his Were Creature dedication earlier, with stuff like Bear Hug to fit with his grappling, or Undying Beast and Scarred Hide making him even tankier. This was a real fun build to revisit, so let's review our rounds and see how this fight's gone. Sett the Boss is a Dromar human monk, with the gladiator background to resemble his pit fighting profession that he took up in following his father. He demonstrates that he's the boss when it comes to the fighting pits, through experienced and then legendary professional. He uses Half-Orc to represent his Wolverine Vestian ancestry, given the way that it synergizes with unarmed attacks, and also because it specifically grants him access to Overlooked Mastermind. His Were Creature dedication further explores this aspect of his character, and fits with our Halloween theme. Despite being a monk, he avoids taking any stances, since he isn't a classically trained martial artist, and instead relies on his high strength and innate magic to win the match. The monk's flurry of blows can represent the speed with which his heavy hand's right punch comes out, while Force of Nature gives him some fast healing to demonstrate his heart of the half-beast. Chi Rush gives him the speed boost of his knuckle down, as does Just a Monk and its incredible movement in general, and he can follow it up with Inner Upheaval to empower his 2 strikes with a flurry of blows. He can further combine Inner Upheaval with Overwhelming Breath to punch through the physical resistances of his enemies, calling to mind the true damage of his Haymaker, while he actually represents the Koni of the ability with Chi Blast, sending a shockwave of force that has a size based on how many actions he spends on it. He doesn't have much in the way of shielding, but there is heroic presence to grant him temporary HP to resemble the shield that he gains when activating this. Facebreaker is a bit harder, mostly with the stun, but Were Creature comes in again with Cornered Animal, or you could simply grapple 2 creatures on either side of you, damaging them with a crushing grab and locking them down, though not quite stunning them. For Showstopper, we've got a couple options cooked in here. Whirling Throw comes with the repositioning aspect of it, and he can follow it up with a quick jump. But there's also Aerial Power Driver, or even Godbreaker, to slam the victims into the mat with astounding force. Finally, to really represent Sett's status as a juggernaut, he has feats such as Toughness, Die Hard, and Robust Health, and has mastered all of his saving throws, letting him practically wade through combat to lay the smackdown on some suckers. This Mega Macho Mama's boy mashes in melee with maddening might, making mincemeat in matches before bunting baddies into the bunch, putting business as a beefcake most brawling. Look forward to more spooks and scares in the coming month. But perhaps if you get the inkling, let me know what you think of this build first, and what other sorts of build you'd like to see down in the comment. If you want to check out the other builds I've already done, including the builds for the Mr. Ink from our previous Spooktacular, check out the blog or Twitter. You can find those, along with the Discord, linked below. Thanks for watching, and have a frightening Friday.